This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Welcome to the special edition of NC Spin devoted to municipalities. You and I live in America, in North Carolina, and each of us resides in one of the 100 counties in our state. Over half of us also live within a municipality, better known as a city, town, or village. This show features 4 mayors from throughout our state. They include Mayor Mancy McFarlane from Raleigh, Mayor Bill Bell from Durham, Mayor B.J. Murphy from Kinston, and Mayor Jill Swain from Huntersville. Welcome to our show.
Great.
Local governments in North Carolina take 2 forms primarily. As we said, each of us lives in the 100 counties, and within that county, many of us live in one of the 552 municipalities. These cities, towns, and villages are granted a charter by the General Assembly and given their powers by that legislature. Typical services they provide include water, sewer, police, streets, transportation, recreation, garbage collection and recycling, land use planning, and fire protection. Question 1 to Mayor McFarlane. Our cities and towns are a creation of the state, governed by the state, have powers only to the extent they're given by the state, essentially a subdivision, if you will, not a freestanding entity. Is North Carolina unique in this regard, or is this pretty much the norm with other states?
No, that's pretty much the norm. All local governments are given their authority by the state in which they reside. And there's really 2 forms of that. There's Dillon's rule and home rule.
Now, Dillon, D-I-L-L?
L-L-O-N.
Okay.
And that's what we are primarily. In a Dillon rule state, the municipalities are only allowed to do what the legislature says that they can do. In a home rule state, they have a little more leeway.
So, Mayor Bill, the legislature, in giving you authority, gives you authority to be able to collect revenues or taxes, whatever they may happen to be, to provide services to people. Included in that list are property taxes, sales taxes, fees, and licenses. Do the cities have enough flexibility to be able to generate the revenues that they need?
Well, Tom, generally we do, but when we don't, then we go to our typically local delegation, who in turn will go to the General Assembly to ask for additional revenues. And I'll give you an example. In Durham, we developed the Durham Performance Arts Center, DPAC. To do that, one of the revenue sources has been an additional hotel-motel tax. We had to go through our local delegation, then to the General Assembly to get that approved, and it provided us an additional revenue source to do that. And one that I'll mention also is the fact that regionally, when we're trying to develop a light rail system, we were given authority to, the counties were given authority to have a referendum on a half-cent sales tax. And as you probably know, it's passed in Orange County and passed in Durham County, and hopefully it'll be passed in Wake County at some point in time.
Mayor Murphy, one of the things I hear people talking about are property taxes. I think that's one of those taxes that people like to dislike. I was a little surprised to learn that in North Carolina, property taxes are actually in the mid to low range as compared to other states. But our sales taxes are sort of in the mid to high range from that standpoint. How much of a problem for you is forecasting revenue, particularly when these sales taxes sort of rise and fall with the economy?
Well, it's always tough trying to predict or forecast what our budgets are going to be, because you never really know which side of the spectrum the General Assembly is going to end up on. For example, last year there was a bill introduced in the House that was going to limit our ability to have different rates for outside customers, because we have utility services like water and sewer. And how was that going to impact our ability to service them? Would that change the inside rates, which more likely would have affected our property rates as well as the enterprise fund rates? And so, there's always this balancing act of what's the General Assembly going to do, and how does that impact us today as we look to the next fiscal year, which starts July 1st.
Mayor Swain, we're going to talk about the business of migration of people in just a few minutes. But the primary reason why people move to a city or town is to find a job. How big a part of your job is economic development?
Big portion of my job is economic development. And I would disagree with you a little bit and say that finding a job is one of the reasons that they move to a municipality, but quality of life is also another reason why they would move to a municipality, and the ability to get to a job from wherever they move. That's why I think we mayors look at issues like transportation. We try to recruit businesses from all over. We look at art and culture as part of the quality of life. So there's a lot of different items that we have to look at to generate the population and diversify the tax base.
Mayor McFarlane, I know that economic development has certainly been something that you have been vitally interested in, particularly in the city of Raleigh. One of the things that I have found interesting is that prior to just the last few years, when we talked about trying to lure businesses and industries into our state, it was primarily the state that was offering economic incentives to these businesses. Now the cities have gotten into this and counties have gotten into this. Comment on whether or not you think this is a good thing and a wise use of money.
Well, I will say that when it comes to recruiting business, the biggest incentive is exactly what you said, which is quality of life. And what we're seeing more and more is that, you know, jobs can locate or businesses can locate wherever they want, you know, in the age of telecommunications. So when they decide where they want to have their office, they want to be where their people want to live. You know, it's a combination of having the workforce that they need. And it is arts and culture, and it is all of those things. So yes, you know, the financial incentives are a piece of it, but it really fundamentally comes down to, is this a place our workers want to be?
Yeah, but Bill, is this a case where this is just a game of escalation, and where does it all end?
No, I don't think so. I think Nancy's laid it out pretty clearly. We've used incentives where we think it was appropriate, but the point is that I haven't had, and I've been in this business a little while, I can't recall any company that has really considered moving, at least to Durham, that is considered property taxes. Generally quality of life, schools, recreation, transportation, and those type of things.
And housing, affordable housing.
Housing is a part of it.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because
A variety of housing options.
yeah, once there were some federal funds to be used to help provide affordable housing, as my understanding, they've sort of dried up now. So how do you go about providing affordable housing for workers?
I would say that we in Huntersville have worked very hard to have a subdivision zoning ordinance that allows for a variety of housing types, and we actually encourage that. We know that it is, to have a viable community, you have a range in your demographics of incomes, and you need to provide for affordable housing to what $1-million houses as well, because you will have, in a corporation, you will have the line workers and the CEOs. So if you're going to be a successful community, you have to provide for all of that, and you have to plan for it.
PJ, in the past, cities and counties sort of had separate distinctions of what they provided. As we said at the rundown, cities did water and sewer, streets, libraries, recreation. Counties were more involved in people issues like health services, courts, and registers of deed. These lines are really kind of blurring now between the cities and the counties. What's that doing to the relationship between towns and cities?
Well, it may be a little bit different, some heavier concentrated areas, because in Lenoir County, where I'm from, the way you just described it is more or less the way Kinston and Lenoir County operate. And the good thing is that our city and our county government work really well hand in hand, because we need each other, just like we need the General Assembly to work in unison, so that we can attract those people and attract those good.
Well, the rest of you
jobs.
Pretty well agree that your relationships vis-a-vis the county are pretty
I would
good?
say in Durham, I think we have a very good working relationship with county commissioners. And of course, Durham is unique because there's only one large municipality, and that's the city of Durham. So
Right.
it facilitates working together. But I think we have a very good relationship.
You know, I think that for an area like Raleigh, we're in Wake County, which has 12 municipalities, and certainly with the growth we've experienced, especially over the last 10 years, we're really starting to see those lines blur.
Yeah.
And I think that working with the county government going forward, it's really important that we not only think that we're planning for what we need now or in the next year, but in 30 years, there aren't going to be any, you know, it's going to be one big mass, and
Right.
that's why planning is so important.
Joe?
Well, I would say I want us to remember, too, that, and I can't tell you how many years ago it was, but when Governor Easley was in office and we had a budget budget crisis, if you will, and the governor had to take some of the funds that we normally expect. I believe that that was really the genesis of us as municipalities and counties realizing that we had to work together to plan for the future and that we depended upon each other. We had to be able to forecast without the assumption that the state was going to take care of us. I think that really kind of changed things a while ago.
People often ask how they can watch an episode of NC Spin they missed or even go back and watch a particular show again. It's easy to do. Just go to our website, ncspin.com, and look at the top corner of our homepage. Click on the YouTube button. And you can keep up with all the comments of panelists and viewers each week by visiting that website or by catching NC Spin on Facebook. Remember, ncspin.com or NC Spin on Facebook. Current issues when we come back.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
Our farmers are among the most productive in the world, even while lacking a stable and reliable agricultural workforce. But the workforce problems in agriculture have reached a breaking point, and food demand continues to rise. Reforms to the immigration system can ensure that farmers have access to the workers they need. The good news is that we still have time to fix this corrosive problem. Tell your congressional representatives that we need comprehensive immigration reform in 2013.
North Carolina is a great place to live, work, and raise a family, but we consistently rank in the bottom third for state health. Poor health choices and inactivity cost our state $54 billion a year, dollars that could be saved through healthier living. We can do better, North Carolina. That's why NC Spin is working with health and community organizations to launch a Healthier NC, an education campaign and challenge to live healthier lives. Join us at ahealthierNC.com.
Raffaldini Vineyards is Chianti in the Carolinas. Enjoy Italian-style wines, breathtaking views, cultural events, and much more. Visit raffaldini.com.
We now return to NC Spin.
We continue our discussion with 4 mayors of North Carolina. Our municipalities are currently facing many issues and challenges, and we want to discuss some of them. From my years of experience, it appears that cities and counties have enjoyed a pretty good relationship, as you heard earlier, with state government, but that relationship seems to be more strained right now. Senator Tom Apodaca recently said, our cities have become too powerful, especially in power over the county. He says cities have been given carte blanche over the last 25 or 30 years. Now they're seeing some pushback. Mayor Bell, it does seem that there's strain between the relationships of the legislature and our cities. On what basis did Senator Apodaca make these remarks? Is he right? Have cities become too powerful?
Well, Tom, I really was a little taken back by the remarks attributed to the senator, and I don't know him personally, but as you know, I've had the privilege of serving as a county commissioner for 26 years, chaired the board for 12 years. I'm in my 12th year as mayor of the city of Durham. So I understand both sides of the seat. And what I realized when I was a county commissioner, anything that happened in the city ultimately benefited the county, especially when it came to development and growth, because if something came on the books, the county commissioners benefited as well as the city. So from my experience, I don't see that. But again, I can't get into the Senator's head, so I'm not sure why he made those remarks.
Jill, I want to ask you, Republicans have always maintained that government works best that is closest to the people. But this legislature seems to want to take control away from local governments, and in fact, some people are calling them big government Republicans. Is that what's going on here? Is there politics at play, or are there some really serious issues?
Well, you gave me the loaded question, didn't you? I have to say I'm mystified. And I am a registered Republican. I am a proud mayor of a nonpartisan board. And I can safely say that our successes in Huntersville, in our region, within Mecklenburg County, have occurred because of nonpartisan behavior and the parties getting along.
All right, that's not answering my question.
I know, I'm getting there. I'm
Okay.
getting there, Tom. We're seeing a shift, I think, in the General Assembly with the Republican Party, and I think their constituency today is different than it has been in the past, and perhaps their audience is, their constituency is more of the bigger business, and they're responding to the bigger business. And we municipalities, really don't have the weight, the financial weight, to really work with them.
Nancy, it seems to me that all of this got started over issues of annexation. That North Carolina has some of the most liberal laws in the nation, allowing cities and towns to annex adjacent property. Were there instances where the cities didn't use this annexation properly?
Well, I'm sure that's part of the debate too, and there might have been, but I always say I don't punish all my children when one of them makes a mistake. And that's kind of what it felt like. There's certainly examples around the state of great use of annexation. I mean, we got together with the county years ago and planned out, where the ETJ was going to go and how we were going to grow and develop, and we followed that pattern. It's been incredibly successful. If you look around the country at cities that don't have annexations ability, you see some real problems with that.
They wither and die.
They do.
Yeah. BJ, let's talk about some of the other issues. House Bill 150. Is going to deny cities and towns from instituting building codes and inspections that are different from what the state codes are. Lawmakers believe that our cities are making it too difficult for builders to build. What's your response to that?
I'll be honest, I was probably more apt for the annexation question, since that was something that we actually were knee-deep in. But to your point, I think the legislature as a whole has the same goal as we all do. They want to see things to improve, things to get better. Maybe the tact is a little bit different than they're looking at it at a state perspective. I'm a mayor of a town with only 22,000 people, and we have lost population over the last 13 years or so. So our perspective is a little bit different maybe than some of these other growing areas. But to your question about building codes, we haven't had any major issues with building codes. In fact, our community is actually trying to update and modify to modernize our
Well, let me
codes.
ask, were there some reasons why city codes were different than state codes?
Well, let me say this, Tom, because I think that really gets to the point of what the rub is with what's happening over in the General Assembly. If there are issues, I think you ought to pinpoint those, not throw the baby out with the bathwater. My community wasn't having an issue for that, so why put a state law in place that's going to impact me, where you haven't had my delegation go ask for it? I don't know anybody in our community that's asking for it, but the state just covers the whole cities with a blanket issue, and I think that's part of the problem.
It's been a cookie cutter approach to try to solve problems maybe that we've heard in a couple of communities, but to me it would be more beneficial to the legislators to have them reach out to those communities and talk to them about the flagrant
Well, I like what
issues.
you had to say. Don't punish all your children because one of them acts up. One of the topics in this legislature that we've heard an awful lot about is the city of Asheville's water system.
Right.
Now, there have been problems with that water system since Fido was a pup, and we've talked about them on this show quite a bit. But the legislature wants to take this water system away from the city of Asheville, put it in a metropolitan sewer district without any compensation whatsoever to Asheville. It's a large part of the revenues that they receive there. Now, a lot of cities are banding together to stand with Asheville on this issue. Mayor Swain, where are you on this?
I put this in the entire pot of all the other things that are affecting the municipalities. This is just one of many right now that it seems that we're really not having a say in how these issues affect our towns, and that the approach is we'll fix a problem that may or may not exist.
But this legislation, as I understand it, would allow any municipality or region that has a water system for communities to come together and make it into a metropolitan sewer district, would it not?
That's my understanding.
Doesn't that concern y'all?
We're all very concerned, and I will say, to the point of having an enterprise system like that, to take away the asset and leave us with the debt. I mean, I don't know how you even reconcile that, not only from what's fundamentally right and wrong, but also when you think about the impact on our AAA bond rating. I mean, if I'm a rating agency and I'm thinking, at any time your state can come and take away your assets, that's got to affect not only, locally, regionally, but the entire state.
More current issues when we come back after these messages.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
You trust your family physician to care for you and your family. We treasure that trust and are committed to providing the best care possible for all North Carolinians. It's time for Medicaid reform, but not without input from North Carolina's family physicians. Medicaid reform will impact health care for all of us. Tell state leaders you want your physician involved. We need Medicaid reform that's good for North Carolina. To sign our petition of support, visit rnchealthcare.com.
Not all high school graduates go to college. Not all employers need college graduates. Are North Carolina's public schools preparing graduates with the skills employers need now? Join the discussion. Visit nceducate.com.
We now return to NC Spin.
We continue our very interesting discussion with 4 North Carolina mayors. We were talking about current issues, and one of them that has to be talked about, and BJ is in a different part of the state from you, but it's the discussion that's going on in Charlotte, where they're going to take the airport away from the city of Charlotte and give it to a regional authority, much like what we're talking about doing earlier with the city of Raleigh. Now, the state treasurer has voiced some concern about this because the city of Charlotte has borrowed money, and as you pointed out in the earlier segment, it might impact their AAA credit rating. What's your reaction to what's going on with that? Does it concern you that something like that might happen in your community?
Well, what I can tell you in eastern North Carolina, the Global Transport is certainly one of the shining stars that we're working on, and I would love to have air service there. I'd love to have this problem that they're having in Charlotte right now, just to be in part of that discussion. But I can't tell you what's best for Charlotte, and I certainly can't tell you what's best for Raleigh and Durham and Huntersville. What I can tell you is that sometimes there is a lack of dialogue between those on the local level and those in the legislature, and it's really important that here in Kinston, North County, we've got really good relationships with those folks, and we've got folks on both sides of the aisle. We got 2 senators and 2 representatives on both sides of the aisle. We have a really good relationship, and I'm not seeing that play out. Mayor
McFarlane, I was saving the best for the last, and that's the Dix Hill deal that was done in the closing days of the Perdue administration. Now this legislature is saying they want to come back and undo the deal. You have said publicly that essentially this is the state reneging on a contract. I think the question that gets raised here is if the state can do something like this, should this cause concern to other cities and other governments and bondholders about the state reneging?
Well, I certainly think it would set a precedent. I mean, we're already looking at the state taking away assets such as an airport or a water system, but this is even a little different. This is a contract that we entered into in good faith with the state. And so it affects people. It will cause people to look back at what contracts they have, and it may cause people to think twice about entering into a new one.
With the state.
With the state.
And Tom, if I may add to that, one of the comments that came out of the public hearing or the public event on the Dix Park was that this is a sign, when we're talking about economic development, to outside corporations on how North Carolina does business. Now, one of your first questions of us was about economic development and how hard we have to work to bring companies in to our municipalities. We have to do the sales job. And when instances like this make the headlines, it makes our job a little bit more difficult.
Mayor Bell, I want to talk about the fact that one of the big issues in this legislature is tax reform. And of course, we're all waiting to see what that's going to look like. But one of the tax reforms that Senator Bob Rucho is saying he wants to abolish is the privilege tax that cities charge to businesses. Now, if these revenues get abolished, we haven't heard any discussion about how they're going to replace. What kind of impact is this going to have on you?
It will have a serious impact in Durham. Now, I don't know about other municipalities, but it would have a very serious impact, and we've been watching that very closely, and hopefully it won't happen. But I think what's happening in this legislature, they tend to be reacting to problems that really aren't problems. And, they have a vehicle to really look at a problem. That's the study commission. And I know a lot of people think the study commission is where things die, but I think it's also a place where people can really look at what the issue is and come up with a reasonable solution. And that's not happening.
All right, what's the future for our cities? We'll talk about that after these messages.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
North Carolina is a great place to live, work, and raise a family, but we consistently rank in the bottom third for state health. Poor health choices and inactivity cost our state $54 billion a year, dollars that could be saved through healthier living. We can do better, North Carolina. That's why NC Spin is working with health and community organizations to launch a Healthier NC, an education campaign and challenge to live healthier lives. Join us at ahealthiernc.com.
We continue our interesting discussion with 4 mayors. Census data proves that people are moving from smaller communities to larger cities. North Carolina once consisted mostly of smaller towns, but we want to talk about, Mayor Murphy, you represent Kinston in the eastern part of the state. What's the future for smaller cities in our state?
The future is bright, but we can only achieve that by building coalitions. In fact, in eastern North Carolina, you'll see Greenville, Ada, Kinston, Goldsboro, Wilson, and the counties getting involved in a project called Quad Cities, which is an interstate loop in eastern North Carolina, and that's what's going to be the future.
All right,
of small
Mayor
towns.
Swain, you live in one of those areas that's sort of a shoulder community that's growing very rapidly. What kind of problems is this growth presenting to your city?
Well, we've strategized and planned for the growth for a number of years. So we grew 728% in a decade. We know how to handle it.
Wow. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this program dealing with North Carolina municipalities. To stay informed all during the week, give your feedback, and read our weekly column, visit our website, ncspin.com, or catch us at NC Spin on Facebook. And next week, we'll return to our normal format, discussing issues of interest to the people of North Carolina. Until then, stay informed and watch out for the spin.
Join us next week and get the spin on issues facing our state.